Hello everyone. My name is Turan and I am co-chair of the ACG Women Network Student Committee, and I am located in Azerbaijan. So here today with us is Anna, and she is currently the president of ACG of 2021-2022. And I want to congratulate you, Ms. Shaughnessy, for the position. Can you please talk a bit about yourself?
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I'm Anna Shaughnessy, like you just heard, and I just stepped into the role as president of the SCG. I have quite a bit of background with SCG. I've been on the executive board before for the SCG Foundation. I was part of actually the team that established the Women's Network way back. And I've also been in the role of interim executive director. So SCG has become a passion of mine, and it's really where I spend. But originally, I come from Sweden, and that's where I was raised. I got my undergraduate degree in Sweden, oceanography from the University of Gothenburg. And then I came to the US, got a master's in oceanography, actually, from the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. After that, I've started my career in the oil and gas industry with Mobil Oil, spent quite a few years with them, went to Saudi Aramco, then back to Mobil Oil, then went to Texaco, Kerr-McGee, Anadarko, and then switched completely, if you will, and came back to MIT as executive director for the Earth Resources Laboratory. So I have a long career. I've had the opportunity to live, of course, in Sweden, but also in places like Boston, Dallas, in Saudi Arabia and Iran, in Stavanger, Norway, in New Orleans, and then Houston, and now I'm back in Boston again. So that's just a little bit of me. I feel like I've had a privileged career, and it's been quite a ride. And I think if anything that you should expect is that it's not going to be a straight path and you don't know what's going to happen, but raise your hand and sort of take the opportunities you can. So do you want to start asking me some questions?
I think I will start. Oops, sorry. I think I will start from the beginning. As I remember, in your SCG 2020 honor lecture, you talked that you started your career, and as you said it now, you started your career as the oceanographer, and was drawn to geophysics during the geophysics expedition. I was wondering, could you share with us what attracted you and what the geophysics means to you?
Yeah, so to start with, in Sweden, if you are a good student, you're sort of almost directed into the sciences because, and whether you're a girl or a boy, so that's kind of the direction I went. And oceanography just sounded cool. And of course, while I was studying oceanography in Gothenburg, we had all sorts of fun field trips, and we would go out and we would measure water salinity, temperature, currents, and all these different things. But then I came to the US, and I was invited on a geophysical research expedition with the Woodsole Oceanographic Institute. And basically, we went out to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and more specifically to the Kane fracture zones, where we put down ocean bottom seismometers to measure the thickness of the oceanic crust. And not only was this sort of a big thing for a young woman from Sweden, but it was just so amazing. And as we are collecting this data, I was just in awe that we were learning things that no one else knew. We were taking geophysical measurements and sort of put together a picture of the oceanic crust in basically this spreading zone. And it just seemed so amazing that I could be part of telling the world of something completely new and different. And of course, not everyone cared about what we did. However, what has sort of followed me all along with geophysics, that any time you do a geophysical survey, whether it's seismic, whether it's GPR, whether it's electromagnetics, gravity, you are learning new things. You're seeing things that no one else has done. And that to me has always been fascinating. We're sort of part of this big puzzle, and we get this big essential piece to put together a story. And so anytime any of you go out and participate in a geophysical survey of some sort, you learn something that no one else has learned before. And the interesting thing is that, of course, again, I started my career around 1980. And since then, of course, there are people that have gone back and collected new data in the same areas where I worked when I was young. And they see new things, they see new truths. And I think that's one of the things that I find so fascinating with geophysics. We get to learn new things all the time. And even if we thought we knew everything, every time we do a new survey or interpret the data differently, we find new things. And we are part of sort of making that story or that picture clearer and clearer every time we go out and collect data. So I think that for me is what's so neat about geophysics.
You described it so good. I understood that I have chosen the right specialty for me. And really, that was so motivational speech, let's say. Yeah. I just wanted to say to our viewers, like, if you will have any questions, you can drop down them into the comments. And the second question from my side would be, I'm from Azerbaijan. I'm living in the petroleum country. And I just wanted to ask you, what do you think nowadays? Should we choose the geoscience more related to the petroleum, I mean the petroleum countries, or that's more to the near surface, or maybe something connected with the alternative energy and etc.?
So we're going to need geophysicists in all areas of applied geophysics. And the truth is that we're going to need petroleum for many years to come. So if you look at the world right now, I think we have about 7.8 billion people today. And by 2050, I just looked this up, we will have 9.7 billion people. And of these people right now, about 3 billion people, 3 billion, think about that, do not have access to clean fuel for cooking. And about 940 million people do not have electricity. In order for people in these countries that don't have access to energy to be able to get out of poverty, they need energy. And so while we in the developed countries need to really think about why we're using so many petroleum products, we are going to need to be able to supply many billion people with electricity and clean energy and so on and so forth. So if you are in a country where there is an active and strong oil and gas industry, my recommendation would be to definitely look at that as an option. But then when you start in that company, what can you do to make sure that we choose the cleaner petroleum, gas versus oil versus coal? And how can you contribute to make sure that the company you work for really pay attention to the environmental impact of the exploration, production, development, the capturing the emissions to make sure that you don't make things worse, but at least keep things on an equal footing, because we are going to need oil and gas for a long time to come. But you can help by exploring and developing these products in the most clean fashion. And so I think that's where what I would like for young geoscientists to, don't necessarily shy away from oil and gas, but help make the oil and gas the best and cleanest sort of fuel that you can possibly get. Having said that, we are going through what we call the energy transition. And so more and more companies are looking at shifting from oil and gas, from petroleum, to more renewable energies like wind, solar, geothermal, etc. These are arenas that I think are very exciting. We're going to need more geophysicists, geoscientists in these fields. There are going to be many more opportunities for people in the environmental arena. Again, geothermal, mining. There will be we will need to learn much more about carbon sequestrations and provide carbon solutions, so to speak. So there are many different fields, but we are going to need bright geoscientists, geophysicists in all these arenas. And I think my advice would be, don't look for an area of geophysics where there are no jobs, where you can't make a difference, but go where there are opportunities for you, and then make sure that you do your best to really make your company make the right choices. So that would be my advice for someone like you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. I graduated from the bachelor's 3 months ago by the geophysical engineering, more related to the petroleum sphere. And I was thinking about applying to the master's degree, more related to the alternative and the green energy. I guess that would be the best for myself, let's say, the solution. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have the question here from Mehtizadeh. He is asking about how geoscience may stay actual field of study and for building career during the tendency of renewable energy.
Okay, so could you repeat that, because I can't quite read it on my screen here?
Of course. How geoscience may stay actual field of study and for building career during the tendency of renewable energy.
Well, so from my perspective, you need to go through the core curriculum for a geophysicist or a geoscientist. The domains knowledge, the physics, the geophysics, the math, all those different things are going to be needed no matter what field you choose within applied geophysics. And there, I always recommend students to, get the grades, take those courses seriously, because that matters, especially when you get out, if there is a competition for a job. Grades always matter, especially early in your career. There are a couple of topics that I think have become extremely important lately, and they have to do with coding, artificial intelligence, machine learning. This is something that all of you in the younger generation need to understand and appreciate. We're working with larger and more complex data sets and trying to get more information out of these data sets. And it's important that you understand how you do that, and you understand how artificial intelligence goes about that, because you don't want to just push a button and then find a map, say, and not understand what went into that map. But you really have to understand what that map is about, so that it really is giving you correct information. And I think so artificial intelligence, machine learning is really, really important. Now then, of course, I think all of us really need to be better at communicating what geophysicists do, whether you are in oil and gas, whether you're in environmental or what have you. So I would pay a lot of attention to, and you can argue that this is more soft skills, but maybe you should take an environmental geoscience course to learn how to communicate, to speak the language, understand the terms the environmentalists use. And the same goes for other types of groups, whether it's engineering, maybe it would be good to learn something about how policymakers speak, because it's going to be so much more important for us to communicate what geophysics do. I think we all have an incredibly important role going forward to make the world appreciate that if we're going to have a sustainable world, we're going to need to use geoscience in so many different places. And that is not understood yet. So the more you can learn about communicating what you're doing, I think that's really, really important. And so that goes into more of the soft skills. I always try and tell students that practice while you are at school, practice to give presentations, and practice to write and communicate to your peers. And if you have an opportunity to do outreach, say to some high school or something like that, that's an excellent way to kind of think about how you change your language, how you use different words to really reach a different audience. So those would be some of my pieces of advice for going forward with a geophysical or renewable energy career.
Thank you so much for your answer and for the question, Mehdi. Let's switch to the next question. How was your experience during your life of combining the personal life and work, and what difficulties did you have during this?
Yeah, so it turns out that I actually met my husband on an oceanographic cruise, not the same as the first one, but he's also a geophysicist, and we have now been married for over 40 years. And some of what was really helpful with that is, first of all, my husband, Dan, always knew what I was doing and why I was doing it. So it was never a question about that. The other thing that was really important for me is he understood that my career was just as important as his. And in truth, I don't think I would have married him. I know I wouldn't have married him if that wasn't clear to him. So that, I think, was made it easier. However, of course, career and family is always a juggling game. But because Dan and I had this understanding that both of our careers were important, we knew from the beginning that we had to actually spend money on childcare. And when our kids were young, there weren't a lot of opportunities for, how shall I say, daycare centers and things. So we usually had someone come to our house in the morning and stay until one of us came home. The other thing is we got help. We got help to clean the house when we were able to do that. So that helped because we could focus on work and then make sure that we were also there for the kids. The other thing we did was, and both Dan and I had different times in our career when we traveled a lot, and sometimes there was a lot of overtime. And we had this shared calendar that actually at the time sat on the refrigerator because we didn't have the same tools that we have now. And whoever put their trip on this calendar first basically that meant that the other one, if your boss came and said, I want you to go to wherever next week, I would say, I'm sorry, Dan is away then, so I can't go then. And so this was sort of our way of juggling a dual career. Now, the benefits, of course, again, were that we both learned so much more than if we had just done one job. So that was really great. Another thing for me that was really important was I had to have kind of something that was just for me. And for me, it turned out to be triathlons, the swim, bike, run kind of events. And there were many, many years when I would get up at 4 or 5 in the morning to make it to the gym so that I could train. But that was my time. That was my time to think, to breathe, to kind of clean my head, or if you will. And then, of course, I competed for over 30 years. And that was sort of, even though I wasn't a professional athlete, it was just something that was very exciting for me, and kind of gave me a break from all the other things that I had to do. So I would, and you don't have to do something physical, but it could be anything, whether if you like to play the guitar, if you like to read, whatever. But I think it's really, really important to have some me time to be able to kind of be able to breathe a little bit, and so that you wake up the next morning and you're excited to go to work again. So those are just some of my thoughts on that.
Yes, sometimes in the beginning and during our life, we need the support of our loved ones, because sometimes we're out of our hands, and when they say something, you will do it, everything would be okay, that's really encouraging time. Yeah. So more people are connecting. Just wanted to say that if you will have any questions, just drop down them into the comment section. And yeah, let's switch to the next question. So how was your experience reaching the leadership positions, and what hints, what tips would you give to the professionals to follow in your career?
Yeah, people have a dream from when they're little that they're going to be whatever, a big boss somewhere. I didn't have that. I've had more of these sort of 5-year kind of thoughts of where I wanted to be, but that's individual. And by all means, don't shy away from having a big dream, because if you have that, sometimes you reach it. But for me, it was more a sort of a 5-year kind of plan each time. But when I was young or when I was early in my career, we didn't have a lot of women in the industry. And actually the women that were above me were often so busy just trying to juggle their own career that I really didn't have any female mentors. I did, on the other hand, have male mentors that I could reach out to, as well as my husband, who was always extremely supportive. The other thing that I have learned much more about now, but I didn't know it then what it was called, but I had what's referred to as sponsors. And sponsors are people that are higher in the organization than you are, many steps often, that don't necessarily talk to you on a regular basis, but they basically look out for you, and they make sure that your name comes forward if there's an opportunity where you're qualified. So if you have an opportunity to find mentors, I think that's one thing that can guide you in your careers and support you. There are many times when something comes up and you're sort of like, gee, could I really do that? And I think this happens especially for a lot of women. Am I really ready for that? Gee, I don't know that part of the job. And I think that's where a mentor can really help out. And and tell you that you don't have to know everything about that job, but there will be people that can teach you, and there will be people that can help you and guide you. So by all means, raise your hand. So, but the other thing is that the more comfortable you can be to be uncomfortable, the easier it is to raise your hand. And I think if I could probably have done a lot more hand raising when I was younger. I think that if I had had maybe more mentors and things like that, that could have happened. It's not like anything I would take back now, but raise your hand and then go for it. The learning curve can be really steep sometimes, but I often found that very exciting. In fact, I've done a lot of different things in my career. Part of it was that I really got a thrill of that fast learning curve. And then once things settled down, I kind of got bored. And then I'd raise my hand again. And my husband would say that it was sort of an 18-month cycle. And he could tell that, and he would be ready for me to raise my hand again and come home and say, listen, guess what I just did? So, but it all depends. And I think, the other thing that I wish that I had understood better when I was younger was that there are very many different leadership styles, and you don't necessarily have to look like other leaders. And as a woman, you definitely don't have to look like a male leader. It often doesn't work very well. So the thing to me is to get comfortable with the things that you do well and how you communicate and how you lead yourself, and get comfortable in your own skin. That's how you earn respect. You don't earn respect by trying to copy how someone else does it, but you earn respect by finding your own style, and of course by showing people that you can do the job, that you make good decisions, that you are fair to people, and you do the right thing, and that it's not just about you, but it's for the team or the group or the company, that it's you're just part of a process that is fair and correct.
Thank you, Anna. You talked about finding the mentors. Yeah, that's really helpful during, I'm talking about myself during the bachelor degree. That was really helpful for me. Again, the support and just to help you find your path, what to do in that way and what to do in that way. And as you talked about the mentors, I was wondering, and for me and for the students, how to reach them out, the mentors?
Well, I think if you're in school, a very natural mentor is, of course, your student, your advisor, your thesis advisor, or one of the professors or teachers that you find rapport with. A mentor doesn't have to be your own gender, if you will. I think that initially it's easier to find them in your vicinity, if you will. So if you're at school, finding them in school. If you have an opportunity to have an internship somewhere, you can often add a mentor from that company that can stay with you throughout your academic career and provide you input from kind of the workplace in a different way, and show what you need to be successful in a certain work environment, because academic environment can be very different. There are, of course, mentor programs out there, if you can't find a mentor yourself, I encourage you to go look. There's something called Mentoring 360, I believe, that AGU for sure is driving. I know SCG has been part of it. I don't know how active we are right now, but that is another way to find mentors if they aren't readily available kind of just around you.
Yeah, you're right. We have two questions here. Let me read them for you. How did you judge if your choice direction is decent and continue to work on it? And how to get and keep yourself in your time zone without interferences? If you want, I can repeat it.
No, that's okay. I'll
Okay.
on, and maybe if I don't answer it exactly, the person can get back to me. But being in a dual career actually changes the landscape a little bit, because it's not just about your career, it's about you as a team. So there have been times in my husband and my career when we went with one of his opportunities, and times when there was my turn, so to speak. So, for example, we have two children, and from the time our daughter was born, and then her brother 2 years later, and until he was 2 years old, so about a time period of 5 years or so, my career was kind of horizontal, shall we say. I didn't have the capacity to try and do extra. I wanted to be with my really young children. I actually took some time off. I was home for about 6 months before I started working with my daughter. I did the same with my son. So in essence then, those years were my husband's years to go for any opportunity he had, and I basically followed. There were also times when we would move somewhere and one had a dynamite job and the other person had kind of a so-so job. And the interesting thing is that in my experience, you can often make a so-so job become really great. You get in, you do what you're told, and then you start raising your hand and telling people, I could do this as well. I'd really like to explore this. So even if a job doesn't sound perfect from the start, you can make it much, much better. And if you think it's still not fulfilling, that is the time to maybe take an extra course. Maybe it's environmental geoscience, or maybe it's a new language, or maybe it's coding or something. So the thing I think is to, especially in the dual career, is to look at it as, or for me it always was, we were a team. It wasn't about me or Dan. It was about how could we do the best for ourselves and the family. And then eventually my big move was when our kids, our youngest was 2 years old, and I was offered to go from New Orleans to Houston. And my husband said, okay, this is your turn. And we went there. My husband basically left his job with Mobil Oil and started consulting. So it's, and that was a great career move for me. And it was a great career move, ended up to be a great career move for him too. But I think you have to be flexible. There's many young people and young professionals, young students and professionals think that it's sort of this straight path, and depending on how ambitious you are, the curve looks different. But to me, it's not like that. It's a roller coaster, and sometimes you make the wrong decision. Sometimes you take a job and you say, well, gee, this is not me. I don't really like this. I don't feel like I'm using my skills. I don't like the environment. And then sometimes you have to regroup. clearly, if you're in a dual career situation, then you have an advantage because usually you have another salary, if you will. So maybe the one that doesn't like their current environment, they have a chance to look. But don't expect it to be a straight path. It's going to go up and down. And I think even more so, of course, for your generation. In principle, when I started with Mobil Oil in 1980, I thought I was going to spend my whole career with them, and I didn't. But that was sort of the typical thinking at the time. And many of my friends now that started at the same time, they did spend more or less their whole career with one company. Nowadays, it's different, and you have an opportunity to change it. In my days, it meant that you lost benefits. It meant that you somehow weren't respected in the same way. Now it's sort of the opposite. So I think you need to think about when you switch. You need to think about when you want to test something new and kind of weigh the risks and the benefits. And I think one of the things my husband and I always did was we would, on a regular basis, talk about different scenarios. And we would say, like we were in Saudi Arabia, we said, well, what if one of us was asked to go to New Orleans, or what if? And that meant that when one of us would be called in and say, what do you think about doing such and such? We had often already discussed it, so whoever was asked could kind of say pretty much right away that no, that's not an option. Or yes, we'd like to explore that. Would there be an opportunity for my husband or my wife as well? And there were several things that each one of us turned down, actually. There are some very fascinating positions, but it just wouldn't work as a family.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about, was it hard to, when you're going on training for a few weeks or 1 month, that's okay. But when you're moving to another city or the country, you have to sit just and speak what you should do. I think that was a bit tough for you, or that was okay.
Well, so this is kind of interesting. My husband, who is American actually, when I got my master's from MIT, we decided, and we were very lucky because 1980 was a time when there were many, many companies that were hiring. And we decided that we wanted to start working for the same company because we thought that the chances of being transferred overseas would be higher. So we had all sorts of interviews available for us in many, many different companies. I think I had 19 site visits that I was invited to. But we decided that we wanted to go with the same company. And there were only 3 companies at the time that could handle a couple. We had just gotten married. And they were Texaco, BP, no, that's not right, Phillips Petroleum, and Mobil Oil. And Mobil Oil was we went with Mobil Oil, and the reason was that we felt that they really looked at us as individuals and put us in the right spot. So I actually went straight into geophysical training program, which was great because, having oceanography as my degree, I really didn't know anything about petroleum. And I spent a year in their training program. And my husband, who had done a lot of seismic processing, went straight into the processing department. So we went to Dallas with Mobil Oil, and after 4 years, we were asked if we wanted to transfer to Saudi Aramco as loanees, if you will. And though initially, I readily admit that Saudi Arabia was not necessarily the first country that we had thought of going to. London would have been cool, right? But Saudi Arabia was, and we decided that would be a real adventure for us and an opportunity to grow in our careers. And we ended up spending 3 years with Saudi Aramco. They were fabulous years in many, many different ways. The things we learned there were incredible. You know, you have some of the biggest petroleum resources, and we got to work with them right there. The other thing was that at the time, they didn't really have enough experienced geophysicists. So as soon as you showed that you could do something, you basically got a more interesting, more complex project to work on. So the work was fascinating. And then it turns out that our daughter was born there. So there were many kind of both career-wise and family-wise, they were just really fantastic years. And it's sort of interesting because many people say, well, gee, what was it like as a woman to work in Saudi Arabia? And it's one of those things that is not intuitive, but sometimes when you are an anomaly, then you can have an impact in a different way. So it turns out that in Saudi Aramco at that time, all the Arab men, the Saudi men who were above me had been educated in the West, either in the UK or the US usually. So they were used to women. And the younger geoscientists and engineers, they knew that you knew more than they did. And so there was this respect in that way. And what happened often, if I was in a meeting and I raised my hand and I got the word, then the whole room would go completely silent, and because everyone wanted to hear the woman speak. And so you had an opportunity, or I had an opportunity to actually ask questions and influence in a different way. And of course, my voice wasn't threatening. And my style has often been to ask questions as opposed to tell people what's wrong. I often ask questions that make people realize that maybe there's something they haven't looked at, etc. So I had an opportunity to be influential in what I think of as sort of a backwards kind of way, and it was a fabulous experience. So, yeah, that's what I was fortunate to experience.
Yeah, I have a goosebumps now. Yeah. So there's the question from Noshin Sharmili. I'm sorry if I spelled it wrong. So asking, can I be connected with ACG if I got an opportunity to work at NASA, where I engaged in the research work related to the sedimentology of Mars?
Ooh, we would love that. We would love that. So let me tell you that SEG has just started a planetary task force. And the idea is to basically look at how we as geophysicists with seismic and potential methods, how can we use our methods for planetary geophysics? Mars, of course, is incredibly exciting. In fact, at our recent image meeting, our annual meeting in Denver just a few weeks ago, we had a speaker that spoke about the Mars program, and I encourage you to join SEG. We're doing more and more, and we would love to hear from you what you're doing. So please join SEG. It will be well worth it. It sounds like the individual asked this is a young professional. We do have a lot of continued education programs, and we have all sorts of opportunities. So please look into them, and we'd love to learn more what you learned from Mars. So thank you.
Thank you for the answer, Anna, and thank you for the question, Noshin. You talked about Noshin asked about the SEG, and I was just wondering, I started as the part of my student chapter at my university. Then I got into the ACG Women Network. I was just student committee. Sorry, I was just wondering how to get further. I mean, if there are opportunity to be a part of ACG Women Network or ACG Global for the students. I'm junior geoscientist.
Yeah, and the Women's Network Committee, for those of you that are not really familiar, I think it's been in place for about 10 years now. And I am incredibly proud of what this committee has done, because they have basically enabled young women in particular to get leadership opportunities within the network committee, to put together conferences, workshops, you name it. And the other thing the Women's Network Committee has done a fantastic job with is to nominate women for awards, for committees, for positions, and so on and so forth, and put women on. Yeah, in fact, I can say that one of the reasons I'm now the president is because the Women's Network Committee supported me in and helped put my name to be a candidate for initially president-elect and now president. I think right now, I think Maitri Irvin is one of the key leaders as far as helping with the student chapters, but I think there are lots of opportunities. I don't know all the details myself, but I would encourage you to reach out to some of the women on that committee, and especially if you change from academia into your early career, we would love to see how we can better support the young career professionals, not just the women in the Women's Network Committee, but the SEG in total. Within SEG, we have also just started a new committee that's called JEDI, which stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And it is in an effort to ensure that we become more diverse, more inclusive, that we fill the pipeline of new leaders, if you will, with people from around the globe, from different areas of geophysics. And they are starting to look at how can they help do that. So SEG is doing a lot of different things. But I shouldn't just say, and I think, Turan, you know this, it has to do with being proactive. And you, of course, just doing this seminar is showing your leadership skills and your ability to coordinate, to organize, and to be brave enough to do these sort of programs. So this is something that you can put on your CV. I hope you will put on your CV, and that will show a potential employer that you're not just someone that has studied geophysics, but you are already taking significant steps to become a leader of the future.
Thank you for the kind words. Also wanted to thank Isabella and Fernando for always helping and being there and promotive of everything. I know and I see that ACG doing a lot for its members, for the students, and as the Women Network doing for the women. That means really a lot to me, and doing that, helping to that, that's really awesome.
Good.
Thank you so much. We have to, yeah.
If you're not familiar with some of the things we do for students, we have travel grants, we have scholarships, we sponsor field camps, we have different leadership programs. Of course, we have the Evolve program, which is an experiential learning experience. They are just looking for new teams right now, so Google Evolve, SEG Evolve to see what that's about. There are just all these opportunities to, especially for students. So please go out and look at what you could qualify for.
Yeah, I applied for the ACG Student Leadership Symposium in 2020. I passed, but because of the pandemics that was online. But again, I had a lot of opportunity to learn about everything about the geoscience and about the thing that I love. So as you said about the Evolve, maybe you will give some advices for the students that are applying for this program.
How do you mean, as far as what they should write, or?
Maybe right, maybe yes. There's some of the, let's say, hints and tips. Also applying for the Evolve and for the SLS program or SCP.
Yeah, no, there's certainly quite a bit of competition. I think in general, these programs all want to have a diverse group of students. They want to have students that have shown that they are proactive within their own academic institution. Being part of your student chapter can make a difference. If you can say that you have helped organize a conference or lectures or gone out to schools to talk about geoscience, all those different things that show that you've been proactive, that you're already showing leadership skills beyond just being good at school. So in principle, the more you can add to your school and your grades and your studies, I think the better it is. And they don't necessarily all have to do with just geophysics, but even if you're volunteering, I don't know, at the hospital or an old people's home or in a school for young children or something, just the fact that you show that you have the capacity and energy and interest in helping others, I think that's something that's really good as well.
Yeah, you're right. We have two questions from Isabella and Oyemi. So let me show it to you. Isabella asks that you commented on dealing with your coworkers in a non-confrontational way. But did you feel during your work experiences that you needed to toughen up to be heard and respected?
And no, the short answer is no, I think. And again, a lot of my confidence come from being raised in Sweden. Again, when you were a good student, you were pushed into the sciences, and if you got good grades in the science topics, you knew you were smart, and everyone else knew you were smart. And so I think that really, really helped. And in Sweden also, at the time I was raised, girls and boys were sort of treated very much the same way. The boys didn't open doors for girls. If you had a flat tire on your bike, you basically had to learn how to fix it. So I grew up knowing that I could do anything that a boy could do, and often I could do it better. So, and that confidence, that I've never had a problem being confident about. There are all sorts of other things where I wasn't always comfortable or confident, but I found, again, and I think I said something about this in the beginning, it's not my style to raise my voice. In fact, I don't have a really strong voice. So I had to be much more of a seller than a teller. I couldn't just, for me, it didn't work to say, we need to do this, but I would sort of give a reason why we should do something. And I think sometimes by not having a strong, forceful voice, people listen because they didn't kind of have to protect themselves. They could hear and they could listen. And so I think in that sense, I didn't have to toughen up. Clearly, there were times when you were tested a little bit. I remember being out in the field in my very early days. So I was on a field crew and a seismic crew and we started in El Paso, Texaco, Texas, which is near the Mexican border. And then we had to drive about an 8-hour drive up to Odessa in Texas. And so here I was, I'd never driven anything bigger than a VW Bug kind of. And they asked me to drive this pickup truck with a generator. So this is a big pickup truck that had dual tanks. I didn't know what dual gas tanks were. In addition, this pickup truck didn't have AC, it didn't have a radio, and I was supposed to drive 8 hours on my own in this. And it wasn't, and of course, you know, here I was this Swedish woman. I was like, I can do this. But I realized later that possibly they would have tested a young male employee the same way, but it was definitely a test, and they knew they could get away with it. And I guess the good news was that I did it, and I hated it. It was a long, sweaty, boring drive, and they hadn't quite told me how to shift gas tanks, which, you know, there was some sort of lever or switch you were supposed to switch when the gas went low to a certain point. So they were testing me, and I think it's only in hindsight that I kind of thought about that, but there will be times when people are trying to, just show that they have power and they can put you in a somewhat uncomfortable position. And I think that's when, if you have a mentor that you can ask, is this really right? That would have been good. I didn't have that at the time, but I don't suggest that you should put yourself in uncomfortable situations, but there are probably times when people will test you, whether you're a young woman or a young man. It's that rookie kind of thing, just because they can. So, good question.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes it's a bit tough to be a woman in for myself, that's in oil and gas sphere, but in the geoscience. You talked about, I was wondering, were you more doing the office things, let's say working with the software, or you were more like the field geoscientist during your experience?
Okay, so the first year again was the training program. I spent 3 months in the field. I spent 3 months in processing, 3 months in interpretation, and 3 months in GravMag. And that was actually excellent because I actually got to know people in all these different groups. But then after that, I started as a seismic interpreter in the exploration department. But I pretty much, but then I went to Saudi Arabia. And again, I said before, there, when you showed you could do something, you were asked to do something different. And very quickly, I actually became a supervisor of a small team to do, we had to look at the databases for all their seismic data. And it became very clear to me that I actually liked much more to be sort of a team leader and the facilitator as opposed to an individual contributor. And that, again, that had to do with me and my sort of background and skills and my personality. I like to facilitate. I like the idea of making other people grow and support them. So I very quickly kind of went the management route. My husband, on the other hand, stayed on the technical route. He thought that it was just fine to sit in front of a computer screen all day long, every day. And I really am much more, I really like to work with people too. And so again, I very quickly moved into sort of the team leader and manager role. And that's what I really enjoyed. And that's kind of where I stayed all along. But it depends on what your skills are. I guess maybe I wasn't a talented enough geophysicist to like the technical details as much. I like to, I like to lead the team and see that team progress.
That's good that you said in the beginning that you 3 months worked in the processing, 3 months in the field, and etc. That's good when you're trying everything with a bit, and then you're like deciding for yourself what do you like more and what do you want to be in the field or in the office. Yeah. You had a really great experience throughout your years, really. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. Just say what you wanted to say.
Well, I've been very fortunate to have a fascinating career, fascinating dual career, and also have a family. And I think that everyone can have that, but it looks different. And I spoke earlier on that I didn't have a sort of a final goal. And if someone had told me 20 or 30 or even 10 years ago that I would be president of SEG, I would have just shaken my head and said, no way. So for me, it's been more of a kind of a learning and a growth experience of what the career brought. And I think if you have a dual career, it's probably good to not have very strict rules of what you want to see, because that makes it difficult, especially if you move. And we moved from Dallas to Saudi Arabia to Norway to New Orleans, Houston, and then back to Boston. And actually, we always had 2 jobs with every move, but again, that was because we were flexible enough to say that not both jobs had to be perfect. So it's been a wild ride. It's been wonderful. I wouldn't take any of it back. And I encourage all of you to start that journey and set some good goals. But then if it doesn't turn out that the first direction is absolutely perfect, look at how you can transition into something different and use your skills maybe in a different company, a little different arena. And I think the key thing, again, is to be curious, raise your hand and ask questions. And if someone asks you to do something, even if you think you're just 50% there, you should probably go for it.
You talked about the curiosity and asking and doing. When I was just started the bachelor degree, I was really shy. I was afraid to ask something. I thought that it would be silly to ask something like this. That's the big mistake of the students nowadays. They're afraid of being silly.
Yeah, questions are always good, and there really are no silly questions. And what you often find is that other people have the same question. They just didn't dare to say it or ask it. So ask the questions always.
Yeah, that's right. Always be curious and brave enough to raise your hand and speak and ask. Yeah.
So I'm that this has been a very interesting experience for me, because just the title of this hour was kind of scary for me. Ask me anything. There are. It's one thing if you just have questions or you have a topic that you're supposed to talk about, but when it comes to your personal career and your personal path, it's it was just something for me to think about when you asked me to participate in this Ask Me Anything. But it's been a really rewarding experience for me. So hopefully some of you have gotten something out of it, and I wish all of you the best of luck, and just go for it.
I was just wondering, as you had the really long story, the really long path of your career, when I just started going to the internship, applying, I was going through the interviews, and for me that was nervous, and that's still like that when I'm going to the interview. Is it going away by the years, or it still feels the same before the interviews, before the sections, and etc.?
I think the more you practice, the easier it gets. And you kind of learn that it's not sort of life or death, but that you have an opportunity to put your best foot forward, that they are really, really curious about you, and they want to see how you fit. I don't think there's anything wrong with being nervous. I mean, I'm nervous before I give a talk, and especially now, I haven't really given a lot of talks for a long time. So, but it's okay to have some butterflies, and it's okay to show that sometimes too, because it usually means that you are interested in whatever it is, and you are interested to share, like in your case, who you are and what you've done and what you'd like to do. And it's okay to be uncomfortable, but you get better at it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is the question from Oyeyemi Amusan. I hope I said it right. So she said that thank you for sharing your knowledge, Miss Anna. And she was wondering, why is the ACG Evolve only about the petroleum exploration and do not include the solid mineral exploration and the near surface geophysics?
Oh, excellent question. So right now we are actually looking at putting together an Evolve program for carbon solutions. That will be the first one. But in essence, we would like to have an Evolve program for geothermal, for near surface, for all the different things that she mentioned, and many more. I think that what we at SEG see, we have a lot of continued education programs, the Evolve program, that are related to petroleum. And we would like to grow all these other types of programs and educational opportunities in topics that have to do with the energy transitions and more renewables. So it's coming, but it's right now, one of the challenges, of course, is we have to find the funds to do those things, but they are definitely in the plans. And I'm glad that you're asking for them, because that's what we're planning to do.
Thank you, Anna. I think we do not have questions now in the comment section. And from my side, maybe the last question would be, what advices and what soft skills to learn you will give as advice to the juniors? Like they're only starting their career. What soft skills they should develop?
Yeah, we already talked about communication. That one is huge. If you can convey a message to the audience you speak to, whether they are your boss, whether they are your peers, whether they are school children or policymakers, if you can learn to communicate clearly to the specific audience that you're addressing, that is huge. To me, teamwork is always really, really important. you want to be inclusive. You want to help out when you can, because you never know when you're going to need help. And then if you have been seen as someone that helped out, you're likely to get support as well. And when I talk about being inclusive, make sure you include those that don't necessarily just look like you. We need diverse teams. Everyone knows that diverse teams come up with better solutions. So think about that always, that don't just bring in your best friends, but try and pick some of those that you don't know so well and make a point out of getting to know them. The other thing right now that is becoming more and more important that people talk about is agility and adaptility. So what that means is it's particularly of importance now and will be going forward, because it could be that if you are working in the petroleum industry and working on, say, seismic interpretation, that you might be asked to shift to looking at data for finding water or something. So make sure that you appreciate what your core skills look like, what your domain knowledge is, and how that could be transferred into somewhat of a different arena. I think many of us have blinders on what we know and what we're supposed to do. But if you have that basic that base of geophysics sciences, you can go in many, many different directions. And I think also if you have the capacity to study and be good at the sciences, you have the capacity to go in so many different directions. So know that. And again, I would like to repeat, be curious. Don't just study or listen to the things that you already know or the topics that you are involved with. Go listen to other types of presentations. Right now, there are so many offerings, virtual offerings of workshops or talks about different topics. And of course, many of them are free right now. Many of them you can be there as the speaker gives the talk, or you can look at it later. So learn about what other people are doing and expand your kind of sphere of knowledge, even if you're not want to work in that arena, that you understand what other people are working on and are concerned about, because then you can communicate better with that group of individuals as well.
Thank you, Ms. Anna. Yeah, to be curious and to be involved in ECG, that's really important. As talking about myself, it changed me personally, as from the shy girl to the brave girl. And also the ACG not only helping the student from the technical side and soft skills, it also helps as the communication. So while talking to the people from ACG and asking from their advice, it's really helped for me to develop my career during my bachelor's degree. For example, winning the internship at BP and learning more and more. So yes, just let's say advices from your and my side to be involved in the societies and to know more about that. I think that's all from my side. There's no any other questions in the comment section. Maybe you would like to add something at the end.
Well, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. I would like to think that I can be a role model inspiration for some of you. You know, I was this little girl who actually grew up on a farm in Sweden, and it's kind of up to you. And certainly there are some of us that are privileged to have many opportunities, but look around and raise your hand and see where you can where you can join as a student, what you can learn when you are at the university. And then as you start your career, help out, raise your hand, ask what other people are doing. Most people like to share what they're doing because they're really proud of what they're doing. So it's good to overcome your shyness and show that you're interested. So I wish you all the good luck, and thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Miss Anna, for everything, for sharing your experience of talking about the support from your loved ones, about your time. Thank you so much, really. That was the encouraging and motivational speech from your side. And again, from myself and from the side of the rest of the ACG members, we want to congratulate you on becoming the ACG president. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. Have a good day.
Okay. Have a nice day. Bye.